well, this review series should be much more fun. So Ghostbusters tells the story of three friends that create a ghost extermination business. What is up, guys, and welcome to my Ghostbusters review series. Well, in just about a week, we've got Ghostbusters Afterlife coming to theaters, and I am very excited for this. I've heard nothing but amazing things about it, and I'm looking forward to taking my kids to see it too because they enjoy Ghostbusters. Not too many movies I can do that with. So I decided what better time than to talk about the Ghostbusters franchise, which to my knowledge I've never talked about on this channel before, despite it being one of my favorite properties. Ghostbusters was a movie that I grew up with as a kid, and I grew up in the 90s, so by then it was already a huge pop culture craze. There was toys galore, there was video games. I mean, this, even to this day, is still one of the most celebrated and iconic properties of all time. And I really don't have any negatives or even anything I'm mixed on with this original film. I think it's a perfect film. I think it's an absolute classic. So this review is really just going to be more of a celebration of the original 1984 Ghostbusters. So Ghostbusters was a concept that Dan Aykroyd came up with. He wrote this little script, this little treatment for an idea because his parents, I believe his father, maybe even his grandfather, were really into paranormal and had written some books about it. And he created this treatment involving these guys that would go throughout time, very sci-fi centric script, and exterminate all these paranormal entities. And after not being able to get that version of the film off the ground, he went to Ivan Reitman, pitched it to him. Ivan Reitman had already done a lot of very successful comedies with some of the cast that actually ended up in Ghostbusters. And through the collaboration of those two, they kind of came up with what became Ghostbusters, where they took a lot of the sci-fi elements out, made it more of a, creating a business, getting this team together type movie, making it more grounded, setting it in New York, and just focusing on the actual catching of ghosts. Also came up with the name Ghostbusters, which before that I think they called it Ghost Mashers or something along those lines. And they had to fight tooth and nail throughout the production of this movie just to nail the rights to use the name Ghostbusters because it actually belonged to a TV series, I believe, in the 60s or the 70s. And I highly encourage anybody that's a Ghostbusters fan to check out the Netflix series, The Movies That Made Us, because they do a great job on an episode with Ghostbusters that shows all of the trials and tribulations that they had to go through to make this movie and to make it a reality, and they were just stopped at every single turn. But after nailing down the concept, after figuring out what Ghostbusters was going to be, after getting the right cast together with Bill Murray and Harold Ramis, who were not the first picks, it was actually supposed to be a vehicle for Dan Aykroyd as well as John Belushi. Eventually John Candy and Eddie Murphy were being considered. They both passed on it. And the cast that we got here, it's hard to believe anybody else could have been Ghostbusters, but you think about that Saturday Night Live era when all of these guys were at the prime of their careers, and I could easily see a Ghostbusters with an Eddie Murphy in the Venkman role or a John Candy in any of these roles, honestly. God, I love John Candy. God, I miss John Candy. Ghostbusters came out in 1984 and instantly became a classic, a pop culture phenomenon, and nearing almost 40 years after the release of that movie, you can easily say that this is a timeless classic. I mean, we're getting a brand new movie that is trying its best to go back and recapture that magic and recapture the vibe and recapture what worked so well about that original movie, because all these years later, people still love Ghostbusters. They love the characters. They love the ghosts themselves. They love the concept. I mean, this is a Halloween costume that you still will see kids today and even adults that are in their 40s and 50s dressing up with their outfits and their proton packs and doing all of that representation for the Ghostbusters fandom. And it's very, very rare that you find a movie that just seems to nail everything perfectly, get all of the right mixes, get all the right people behind the camera and in front of the camera, and has the longevity of a franchise like this. Despite having some rocky road along the way, people are still so supportive and so excited about new Ghostbusters.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
And starting the long list of things that are just so great about this original film, they find this perfect way to mix so many different subgenres of film into one neat little package. I mean, on its surface, this is meant to be a comedy. It's meant to be a comedy vehicle for all the actors involved. You had Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, all these guys that were at like the top of their comedy career at the time, especially Bill Murray. You have all these sci-fi elements in there that is definitely tapered down from what the original concept was going to be, but it's still very prominent. And there's even some horror aspects here, namely with like the dogs with Zool and the Keymaster and the hands that come out of the chair and take a hold of Sigourney Weaver and pull her into that closet. There is a lot of different mixes, a lot of different elements here that can appeal to so many different movie fans and so many different tastes that there's almost something for everybody in Ghostbusters. And all of it comes together in such an enjoyable package because of the chemistry and because of all of the character interactions here with the team, even including Ernie Hudson. I don't mean to exclude him whatsoever, even though the script itself pretty much excluded him until the back half of the movie, but you have this team of Ghostbusters that they all have their own role. I mean, you've got like the big mouth in Bill Murray, you've got kind of the business guy who's very curious but has a little bit of science background but feels very much like the average Joe in Ray Stantz, played by Dan Aykroyd. And then you get Harold Ramis, who's almost going for like the Spock role of the group, where he's very straight-laced, he doesn't really smile much in the movie, everything is so interesting and scientific to him. Even if he's scared, he's curious about it just for the curiosity of what's going to happen. Like whenever they talk about finally crossing the streams, he knows that that's probably going to defeat the evil, but at the same time, he's kind of curious, like, I wonder if this will destroy all life as we know it. Let's try it. Fuck it. And even all the side roles, which were all casted perfectly, and none of them were the top choice. I mean, you had Sigourney Weaver come in, and she got this role because she came up with the entire idea of her being possessed by these dogs, these like gargoyle statues on top of this building. And she got onto Ivan Reitman's desk and did like an impersonation of what these dogs would be and nailed it and got the role immediately. And God, you gotta love Sigourney Weaver. I mean, if you're a horror fan, if you're a sci-fi fan, she is like the goddess of this genre. Everything that she has ever done for the most part in these genres has always been iconic.
I want you inside me.
Go ahead. No, I can't. Sounds like you got at least 2 people in there already. Might be a little crowded.
And then you get the role played by Rick Moranis, who's like this doofy, almost obsessive neighbor that is in love with Sigourney Weaver. And that was actually a role that was originally going to go to John Candy when he was interested in the project, but John Candy had a very different idea for what this character was going to be, and it wasn't quite lining up with what Dan Aykroyd and Ivan Reitman wanted. So they kind of mutually passed on that opportunity, and Rick Moranis came in and had all of the ideas that eventually became this character, with the neurotic sense and the way that he is just so lovable but goofy and feels like somebody that almost has to buy friends to a certain degree. And that is one of the most iconic characters in this entire movie too, to the point where he actually becomes part of the team in 2, and we'll get there. But all of his interactions with Sigourney Weaver, all the little scenes where he's talking about, oh, your TV was on too loud, so you know what I did? I turned on my TV really loud so they think that there was a problem with the TVs. Like, it's just such a heartwarming dork sense to this character that every time he shows up, he's a scene stealer. Even Annie Potts as Janine, just their secretary. She's only got a few scenes, but when I think of like stereotypical New Yorker, I think of Janine, just that accent, the way that she is so crass and has no patience whatsoever, where they annoy her and picks up the phone, Ghostbusters, what do you want? All these tiny little ingredients, character-wise, that get mixed up into the pot that is Ghostbusters. They are all so integral to the point where you can take out one of them and this movie almost ceases to work because that one key ingredient is gone. You could not do this movie and have the same level of magic without this exact cast and these exact characters doing what they were written to do. And the movie is so creative and so diverse with the amount and the types of villains that they have here, from the beginning with the librarian ghost that scared the piss out of a lot of kids back in 1984. You have, of course, the dogs with Zool and Gozer, and when she shows up and it's almost like a David Bowie type character, which originally was going to be played by Pee Wee Herman. Fun little fact there. Ghostbusters. Of course, you got Slimer, which kind of became the mascot of the ghosts of this franchise to a certain degree. I mean, Slimer was on toothpaste, Slimer was on High C. It became these little things called ecto coolers back in the 90s. There's toys galore with Slimers. That was one of the main things that they immediately threw into the trailers for Ghostbusters Afterlife, was that Slimer was coming back. And you even have the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, which for a long time as a kid, I kept searching for Stay Puft Marshmallows thinking that was an actual brand, because no, I don't want any of this dollar store, I don't want any of this name brand shit. I want my Stay Puft Marshmallows. Where is it? Because that guy is awesome. I just want to see the package. But that whole creativity of creating the big ultimate villain, this Godzilla-sized villain that's going to end all life that you know it, in the form of like the marshmallow version of Michelin Man. Absolute brilliance. Everything in this movie seems like on that line of either it's going to be too stupid or it's going to be absolutely perfect and brilliant and nail it. And every single decision that they made rode that line perfectly to where it became instantly iconic. Even getting away from the story and the characters and just the look of things, like there's objects, there's style, there's music in this movie that has become iconic, that has become some of the most celebrated things ever. The Ecto 1, that fucking car that I wanted so bad when I was a kid. So bad and never got. That is my weenie whistle for you Santa Claus fans. That is the toy that I always wanted and never got. The Ghostbusters theme song, I mean, I've seen like metal covers of this. I mean, it's one of those things where you could hear a couple of notes of this song and instantly everybody's just like, Ghostbusters! And you cannot listen to it without singing along at least once. Rewatching this movie last night, it was amazing to me how well all of the effects hold up on this. I mean, there's some effects here that are definitely crossing that line of early CGI. There's some stop animation regarding the dogs and things like that that can instantly age most movies to where you still love it, but you watch it and the older it gets, the more high definition the picture gets, it starts to look rougher and loses a little bit of that magic. But just like all the creative decisions regarding the story and these characters and how to portray them, the way that they rode that line with the effects of using just enough computer-generated effects, just enough stop motion, just enough physical, practical effects, to where there's this really even keel of everything staying mostly grounded for the larger-than-life story that they're telling here, and it all ages so damn well. The only thing that's even approaching looking dated is the effects on some of the dogs and the stop motion, but it's so quick and it's used in such a minimalist fashion that it doesn't draw your attention to it and it doesn't stay on screen more than it's welcome. And I never reached that point in my brain where I looked at any of these effects and went, yeah, you could tell that's 1984. Yeah, you could tell this is an older film. They could do that better. You know, they could update that. They could George Lucas that at some point. No, it still works so damn good. And I think a large reason why that worked so well back then and continues decades later to work just as well is because all of the big special effects sequences, all of the more larger-than-life visuals that they give in this movie, they're all there to serve the story and they're all there to serve the characters. It's not a huge, larger-than-life blockbuster spectacle that just happens to have some comedy soaked in. This, at its heart, is a comedy, and it's all there to just reinforce the comedy, to make the jokes better, to make this world fleshed out more. It never quite loses sight of what their end goal is. And that's also part of the reason why the comedy continues to work so well decades later, because there's nothing that's really aged poorly or nothing that's dated about what they're talking about. It's just friends interacting. It's just these three very different personalities trying to have a business and maintain a business. They're not talking about things that were only relevant in 1984.
Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies, rivers and seas boiling,
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes,
The dead rising from the grave.
human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
The physical gags regarding these three almost schlubs that are now launched into the supernatural, where they're getting slimed and they're getting knocked around this hotel by ghosts. Bill Murray trying to negotiate the price and really going over the top because they know that they can just put the ghost back and they can ask whatever fucking price they want. Even the interplay between Bill Murray and Sigourney Weaver, where he's obviously flirting with her, but he's doing it in such a sly way to where he's almost making her believe that she's flirting with him. And especially all the interactions with Walter Peck, the EPA, or the guy that comes in trying to stop the Ghostbusters at every turn and ends up causing all the chaos in the third act. All of Bill Murray's dialogue with him. I mean, that guy just had a knack for playing the biggest douchebag in 80s movies. He was the biggest douchebag in Die Hard, and now he's the biggest douchebag in Ghostbusters. And all of the interaction that Bill Murray has, where he's just really one-upping him with how smart he is and how smart-ass he is and how quick-witted he is, to where this guy's trying to do his job even though he's being a dick about it, and Bill Murray is just fucking with him at every single turn. Some of the biggest laughs in the movie.
Everything was fine with our system until the power grid was shut off by Dickless here.
They caused an explosion.
Is this true?
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
And for the era that this movie came out in, especially for where these actors' careers were, and even Ivan Reitman as a director and as a writer, where their careers were, it's very interesting that this movie maintained a very PG level of humor here. There wasn't a whole lot of sexual humor, there wasn't a whole lot of vulgarity, and that was something that they had kind of built their careers on to that point with movies like Caddyshack and Stripes. So that's also something that's very interesting and kind of unique to Ghostbusters for the era of comedy that it's in, that this is a very family-friendly movie that has a lot of humor in there that adults will only really latch onto without going into rated R adults-only territory, which is something that you don't find very often. And it is all of that well-utilized, well-placed comedy and a lot of the great ad-libbing, especially by Bill Murray, that continues to make this movie just such a timeless, enjoyable movie, because none of these characters ever really feel like they're taking the situation as seriously as normal people would, and that's what keeps the fun of it. That's what keeps it from being a little bit too much horror, a little bit too much science fiction, or something that would go a little bit more over the heads of children or younger audience members. Them just kind of walking in and riffing off of the situation that there's these huge demonic dogs and there's this portal to another dimension at the top of this skyscraper. There's a giant fucking marshmallow walking down the streets. They never take it that seriously, and so you as a viewer never really feel like you can take it too seriously, and you just laugh and enjoy it and have this great time every single time you watch the original Ghostbusters.
We're gonna have to ask you for 4 big ones, $4,000 for that. But we are having a special this week on proton charging and storage of the beast, and that's only gonna come to $1,000, fortunately.
So overall, guys, there's not really much more I can say about this film that hasn't already been said, but it's a movie I have not had the pleasure to talk about on this channel yet. It is one of my favorite classic comedies. I'm really looking forward to this new film, and if you are somebody that has never seen the Ghostbusters, or your kids have never seen the Ghostbusters, do yourself a favor, pick this movie up, play it for the whole family, because it is an absolute timeless classic. I've never met a single person in my entire life that does not love Ghostbusters. So if you're a fan of horror and sci-fi, but you want to check out the lighter, more comedic side of that subgenre and introduce yourself to an absolute timeless classic, please check out Ghostbusters. You will enjoy it and you will thank me later, and add this thing to your collection by going out and buying it. So what do you guys think of Ghostbusters? Are you a fan of this? Are you going to be the one person in the comment section that says, hey, I'm that guy that hates Ghostbusters? I'm sure I'm going to have one or two of you. Let me know down below when you first saw this movie and what is your biggest memory of this. Is it a video game? Is it a toy? Is it seeing it in the theaters? Is it seeing it on the TV screen when your dad introduced you to it? Let me know down below, guys. Let's share some Ghostbusters memories. And are you excited for Ghostbusters Afterlife? If you are a fan of this franchise, please like and share this video to help get some new eyes on it like yourself. And if you are new, subscribe so that you do not miss my review of Ghostbusters 2, the Ghostbusters remake that is going to be an interesting conversation from a couple years ago, and then eventually in a week from now, Ghostbusters Afterlife, which I have all the hopes in the world that I'm going to absolutely love that film. So if you're a Ghostbusters fan, strap on that proto pack and follow along with me for this review series. Thank you guys for watching as always, and remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean that you have to be.